Welcome, gamers! I am MonriaTitans, writer of the Opinions and Truth blog and the host of the Weekend Game Show, where I educate on and discuss different aspects of game development to show why video games can take years to make to prevent another Cyberpunk 2077 launch scenario. And one of the ways I do this is with the Let's Read Some Shit videos, where I read aloud portions, emphasis on portions for DMCA and copyright reasons, of a couple of books regarding video games, their creation, their impact on the world, to show the legitimacy of video games as an artistic medium, and or whatever I feel like reading at the time. In addition, I also hope to promote literacy as a whole. I also provide artist shoutouts to human artists to combat AI art theft. All of them can be seen on the Become Empowered Instagram, all one word, one E in the middle. All rights reserved by the artists. #create, don't scrape. If this is something you're interested in, then you can find the other videos on my YouTube channel under the handle @MonriaTitans, and also on Buy Me a Coffee, where educational quotes regarding video games and literacy are shared. If you tip through Buy Me a Coffee, 15% of the proceeds minimum go to Kids Need to Read, whose mission is to help children discover the joy of reading and the power of a literate mind. Today, I will be reading portions of Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut, forward by Kevin Powers, and Angie Thomas's The Hate You Give. Again, this is for educational purposes, but again, I'll only be reading portions for DMCA and copyright reasons. And I forgot to mention this at the beginning. These are banned books. So this is Let's Read Some Shit, the banned books edition. Alright, so these tend to go about an hour-ish. They can be longer, they can be shorter, and they go as follows. I read the summary on the back of the book, or inside the book, if applicable. Read the foreword and preface, if applicable. If there is no introduction, read part of the first chapter. So, Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut. Now, I went through... Rewind a bit. So, I went through the summaries of these already. These two do have summaries inside the book. They really need to go back to putting them on the back of the book, but that might be just me. So, Kurt Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse-Five has trigger warnings. There is talk of mental health issues, PTSD, post-war anxiety, and other troubling discussions. This is one of the world's greatest anti-war books. That's Slaughterhouse-Five. And then The Hate You Give. More trigger warnings about the books. This is regarding a fatal shooting of a colored individual by police. So if this does not bother you, please keep watching. If this does, I completely understand you clicking out. So, thank you for being here for the time you were. Alright. So, now we go to Slaughterhouse-Five after those trigger warnings. Summary inside the book. A special 50th anniversary edition of Kurt Vonnegut's masterpiece. What? I can talk. Oh, caption still caught it. Never mind. Masterpiece, featuring a new foreword by Kevin Powers. Slaughterhouse-Five, an American classic, is one of the world's greatest anti-war books, centering on the infamous World War II firebombing of Dresden. The novel is the result of what Kurt Vonnegut described as a 23-year struggle to write a book about what he had witnessed as an American POW. It combines historical fiction, science fiction, autobiography, and satire in an account of the life of Billy Pilgrim, a barber's son turned draftee turned optometrist turned alien abductee. As Vonnegut had, Billy experiences the destruction of Dresden as a POW. Unlike Vonnegut, he experiences time travel, or coming unstuck in time. An instant bestseller, Slaughterhouse-Five made Kurt Vonnegut a cult hero in American literature, a reputation that only strengthened over time. Despite his being banned and censored by some libraries and schools for content and language, hence why we're rating it today, Banned Book Edition. The political edginess, the genre-bending inventiveness, the frank violence, the transgressive wit that have inspired generations of readers not just to look differently at the world around them, but to find the confidence to say something about it. Authors as wide-ranging as Norman Mailer, John Irving, Michael Crichton, Tim O'Brien, Margaret Atwood, Elizabeth Strout, David Sedaris, Jennifer Egan, and J.K. Rowling have all found inspiration in Vonnegut's words. Jonathan Safran Foer, Foer, has described Vonnegut as the kind of writer who made people, young people especially, want to write. George Saunders has declared Vonnegut to be the great, urgent, passionate American writer of our century, who offers us a model of the kind of compassionate thinking that might yet save us from ourselves. 50 years after its initial publication, at the height of the Vietnam War, Vonnegut's portrayal of political disillusionment, PTSD, and post-war anxiety feels as relevant, darkly humorous, and profoundly affecting as ever. An enduring beacon through our own era's uncertainties. And there's a little bit in here about the author. Kurt Vonnegut's black humor, satiric voice, and incomparable imagination first captured America's attention in The Sirens of Titan in 1959 and established him as a true artist, the New York Times, with Cat's Candle in 1963. He was, as Graham Greene declared, one of the best living American writers. Kurt Vonnegut died in 2007. All right. Inward. Slaughterhouse-Five, or The Children's Crusade. A duty dance with death. All right, forward. By Kevin Powers. When I was 24 years... What is it today? When I was 24 years old, I watched a small white car through the 4x scope attached to my M240B machine gun. The weapon rested on the wall of a rooftop on the outskirts of the city of Tal Afar, Iraq. The street down which the car drove was otherwise empty, the U.S. Army having previously informed the citizens of Tal Afar to evacuate their city or find themselves caught between military strength deadliness and the people toward whom that deadliness was meant to be applied. Interesting wording. Though the day was hot and hazy, I had been awake for all but a few of the preceding 48 hours. It was unmistakably clear that from a window of the small white car, the occupant of the passenger seat had unfurled a white flag of truce. This was plain even without the aid of magnification provided by my scope. Through the scope, I saw a man in the passenger seat and a woman driving. They were old, and though I can't say with any certainty how old, their age registered immediately as an important characteristic. Old people rarely try to kill American soldiers. I believe this to be both historically true and true. Turning the page. And true in that place and at that time. Old couples waving white flags of truce from windows of small white cars are exceedingly unthreatening, even in a place like Tal Afar in September 2004. Tal Afar. Good grief. Talafar. In September 2004, where many of the young men were very dangerous, including and perhaps especially us. Someone said, "What you got, Powers?" And I said, "Nothing, just an old couple trying to get out." There were perhaps a dozen people on that rooftop, some of whom I knew about as well as you know a person. Others I had only met a couple of days earlier. I think someone got on the radio, but I can't say that for sure. I do know that none of the people on that rooftop were afraid of the old man and the old woman in the small white car. Some distance away from us, perhaps on another rooftop, another group of soldiers had been watching the same white car, though I did not know that yet. I don't remember how much time passed between my saying, "It's nothing," and someone in that other group of soldiers opening fire, but it was likely less than 10 seconds. I don't know why they did it, but I know that 50 caliber machine gun rounds tore into the small white car and tore into the old man and the old woman until the small white car stopped moving and the old man and the old woman were both dead. So it goes. They have been dying in my mind every day for the last 14 years. I suspect they will do so until I've exhausted my own days on this earth. This is my moment, trapped in amber. I am now 38 years old. I live in a rented house in Pittsboro, North Carolina with my wife, my 2 daughters, and my dog. I try to be kind. I try not to hurt people. And though I have just told you all the things I know with certainty about that day in September in Tal Afar, Iraq, when I was 24, I'm still not sure what it means. I don't know if my being there in that place and at that time makes me a bad person, but on most days I think it means I do not get to claim to be a good one. There is an amenity. What? There is an immensely useful thought experiment with which I suspect you are familiar. It goes something like, what would an alien think of blank? The blank is typically filled in with something like sex or our destructive relationship to the natural world or money. War is sometimes used to fill that blank too. The point of the thought experiment is to invent a kind of critical distance between a particular aspect of human behavior and ourselves, the ones behaving unself-consciously, like humans. Unself-consciously. Close. This thought experiment is useful precisely because it forces a perspective so separate, or alien, that with a little luck we gain some insight into why we are the way we are, or why we do the things we do. Like procreate, or poison our habitat, or hoard digital proxies for paper proxies for bits of rare but not all that rare metals, or watch old people get machine gunned to death, or firebomb medium-sized German cities. I've often thought that the book you are about to read is a variation on this kind of thought experiment. Turning the page. Turning the page. I apparently need to hold this closer to my face. All right, reading on. It has few, if any, equals in creating the kind of distance that can offer insight into the mass insanity of modern warfare. But it is so much more than a uniquely useful thought experiment on war. It is equally remarkable in the innovative way its structure is married to, and made necessary by, the story itself. Just before his capture by the Germans during the war, our hero, Billy Pilgrim, becomes unstuck in time. Later in the narrative, we learn that this is a consequence of Billy's subsequent abduction by who? Tralfamadorians. I'm going to spell that. Tralfamadorians. Aliens, who happen to be unbound by the normal limitations of time and space. Through this ingenious device, Vonnegut shows the past as an irresistible force, particularly in the case of those who have trauma at the center of their experience. The war intrudes on Billy's later life in a way that will be immediately familiar to those who have fought in one. His past arrives without invitation, bouncing between the war, his childhood, and his unremarkable later life as an optometrist, which is itself punctuated by visits to mental and veterans' hospitals. As the narrative progresses, we begin to understand that for a man who has witnessed the horrors that Billy has, the Tralfamadorians' belief that the past, present, and future are merely the primitive notions of Earthlings starts to sound like a comforting explanation for the intrusive nature of traumatic experience. This all may sound very strange to you. It is beautifully strange, but let me be more direct about what I really think about this book. Slaughterhouse-Five is wisdom literature. It is a book of awe and humbling clarity. Its lessons are so simple that by adulthood most of us have forgotten or taken them for granted, only to be stunned upon being reacquainted with their fundamental gravity. Through the little green eyes of Billy Pilgrim's Tralfamadorian captors, I love that word, Tralfamadorian. I'll spell it again. Tralfamadorian. Captors, we see ourselves as mere human beings, mortal animals utterly stripped of our pretensions. Our crimes become both monumental and quotidian. Our grief and our destiny both inevitable. This may sound cynical or nihilistic, but I would argue that this book is among the most humane works of art ever created. It is concerned with and dedicated to the alleviation and prevention of human suffering in the face of its inevitability, and I can think of no braver moral position to take than that one. As a man who wrote the first part of this foreword, I've relied on it as a touchstone in my life. You can have Job. Or is that Job? Or is that Job? I'll throw my lot with Billy Pilgrim. In this singularly brilliant introductory chapter, Vonnegut tells us in his own voice how he came to write this book. It was born from his experience as a young Army private, taken prisoner in World War II, witness to both the brutality of the German war machine and the catastrophic Allied firebombing of Dresden. Near the end of the chapter, he writes the following: I have told my sons that they are not under any circumstances to take part in massacres, and that the news of massacres of enemies is not to fill them with satisfaction or glee. I have also told them not to work for companies which make massacre machinery, and to express contempt for people who think we need machinery like that. This is merely one example of Vonnegut's unmatched moral clarity. He, more than any other writer I can think of, could cut through Apparently, C-A-N-T without the apostrophe is a word. That's supposed to be can't or can't? Can't or can't. Ha! Alright, rereading. He, more than any other writer I can think of, would cut through constant sophistry and dissembling to expose our collective self-deceptions for what they are. His sentences are accusations that let you keep your dignity. And for those of us who recognize themselves in those accusations, that generosity is a rare gift. Few among us will ever write something so plainly and undeniably true that its honesty feels provocative, even after my eyes are skipping ahead. My apologies. And undeniably true that its honesty feels provocative even 50 years after it first appears in print. Mr. Vonnegut did when he wrote Slaughterhouse-Five. I, for one, am grateful it exists. Kevin Powers was born and raised in Richmond, Virginia. In 2004 and 2005, he served with the U.S. Army in Mosul and Tal Afar, Iraq. Can I train Pixel Chat? Is that an option? Anyway, Mosul, Mosul, and Tal Afar, Talfafar. Sorry, Talafar. Iraq. He studied English at Virginia Commonwealth University after his honorable discharge and received an MFA in poetry from the Michener Center? No. Michener. Center for Writers at the University of Texas at Austin in 2012. He is the author of 2 novels, National Book Award finalists The Yellow Birds and A Shout in the Ruins, and a poetry collection, a letter composed during a lull in the fighting. Lull in the fighting. Lull. Okay. Slaughterhouse-Five, I will read. That was the foreword. There is no preface. There is no introduction. Unless the foreword also sort of kind of counts as an introduction, but I've seen them as different things. So I will read a portion of chapter 1. All this happened, more or less. The war parts anyway, are pretty much true. One guy I knew really was shot in Dresden for taking a teapot that wasn't his. Another guy I knew really did threaten to have his personal enemies hired. Whoa, my brain skipped ahead. Another guy I knew really did threaten to have his personal enemies killed by hired gunmen after the war, and so on. I've changed all the names. I really did go back to Dresden with Guggenheim money. God love it, in 1967. It looked a lot like Dayton, Ohio, more open spaces than Dayton has. There must be tons of human bone meal in the ground. I went back there with an old war buddy, Bernard V. O'Hare, and we made friends with the cab driver, who took us to the slaughterhouse where we had been locked up at night as prisoners of war. His name was Gerhard Mueller. Gerhard. Gerhard. He told us that he was a prisoner of the Americans for a while. We asked him how it was to live under communism, and he said that it was terrible at first, because everybody had to work so hard, and because there wasn't much shelter or food or clothing. But things were much better now. He had a pleasant little apartment, and his daughter was getting an excellent education. His mother was incarcerated in the Dresden firestorm. So it goes. He sent O'Hare a postcard at Christmas time, and here is what it said. I wish you and your family also... Okay, interesting sentence. I wish you and your family also, as to your friend, Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and I hope that we'll meet again in a world of peace and freedom in the taxicab, if the accident will. I like that very much, if the accident will. I would hate to tell you all right. I would hate to tell you what this lousy little book cost me in money and anxiety and time. When I got home from the Second World War 23 years ago, I thought it would be easy for me to write about the destruction of Dresden, since all I would have to do would be to report what I had seen. And I thought, too, that it would be a masterpiece, or at least make me a lot of money, since the subject was so big. But not many words about Dresden came from my mind then. Not enough to make them to a book. Not enough of them to make a book, anyway. And not many words came now. And not many words come now either, when I have become an old fart with his memories and his pal-mals, with his sons full grown. Sons full grown. I think of how useless the Dresden part of my memory has been, and yet how tempting Dresden has been to write about, and I am reminded of the famous limerick. There was a young man from Stamboul, who soliloquized thus to his tool. Soliloquized. Close. You took all my wealth, and you ruined my health, and now you won't pee, you old fool. And I'm reminded, too, of the song that goes, My name is Jan Jansson. I work in Wisconsin. I work in a lumber mill there. The people I meet when I walk down the street, they say, What's your name? And I say, My name is Jan Jansson. I work in Wisconsin. And so on to infinity. Over the years, people I've met have often asked me what I'm working on, and I've usually replied that the main thing was a book about Dresden. I said that to Harrison Starr, the movie maker, one time, and he raised his eyebrows and inquired, Is it an anti-war book? Yes, I said, I guess. You know what I say to people when I hear they're writing an anti-war books? No, what do you say, Harrison Starr? I say, why don't you write an anti-glacier book instead? What he meant, of course, was that there would always be wars, that they were as easy to stop as glaciers. I believe that too. And even if wars didn't keep coming like glaciers, there would still be plain old death. Interesting place to stop, but I'm going to stop it there. That was portions of Slaughterhouse-Five. Moving on to Angie Thomas's The Hate You Give, Collector's Edition. And this one has a summary. I really need to get a stand for my phone. Anyway, the 16-year-old Star Carter moves between two worlds. The poor black neighborhood where she lives and the fancy suburban prep school she attends. The uneasy balance between these worlds is shattered when Star witnesses the fatal shooting of her childhood best friend, Khalil, at the hands of a police officer. Khalil was unarmed. Soon afterward, Khalil's death is a national headline. Some are calling him a thug, maybe even a drug dealer and a gangbanger. Star's best friend at school suggests he may have had it coming. When it becomes clear the police have little interest in investigating the incident, police have little interest in investigating the incident. Protesters take to the street, and Star's neighborhood becomes a war zone. What everyone wants to know is what really went down that night. And the only person alive who can answer that is Star. But what Star does, or does not, say could destroy her community. and it could also endanger her life. Angie Thomas's searing debut about an ordinary girl in extraordinary circumstances addresses issues of racism and police violence with intelligence, heart, and unflinching honesty. This collector's edition of the acclaimed award-winning novel contains a letter from the author, the meanings behind the names, a map of Garden Heights, fan art, the full original story that inspired the book, and an excerpt from Concrete Rose, which looks like it came out in 2021. There was an about the author. Yep. Angie Thomas is the #1 New York Times bestselling award-winning author of The Hate U Give. A former teen rapper who holds a BFA in creative writing, Angie was born, raised, and still resides in Jackson, Mississippi. You can find her online at www.angiethomas.com. angiethomas.com. Good grief. So go straight into part 1. Okay. It looks like this one actually is going to be shorter. We might not hit the hour after all. Anyway, sorry. Moving on. I shouldn't have come to this party. I'm not even sure I belong at this party. That's not on some bougie shit either. There are just some places where it's not enough to be me. Either version of me. Big D's spring break party is one of those places. I squeeze through sweaty bodies and follow Kenya, her curls bouncing past her shoulders. A haze lingers over the room, smelling like weed, and music rattles the floor. Some rapper calls out over everybody to nay-nay, followed by a bunch of hays as people launch into their own versions. Kenya holds up her cup and dances her way through the crowd. Between the headache from the loud-ass music and the nausea from the weed odor, I'll be amazed if I cross the room without spilling my drink. We break out the crowd. Big D's house is packed wall to wall. I've always heard that everybody and their mama comes to his spring break parties. Well, everybody except me. But damn, I didn't know it would be this many people. Girls wear their hair colored, curled, laid, and slayed. Got me feeling basic as hell with my ponytail. Guys in their freshest kicks and sagging pants grind so close to girls that they just about need condoms. Interesting. Image. My Nana likes to say that spring brings love. Spring in Garden Heights doesn't always bring love, but it promises babies in the winter. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of them are conceived the night of Big D's party. He always has it on the Friday of spring break because you need Saturday to recover and Sunday to repent. Stop following me and go dance, Star, Kenya says. People already say you think you all that. Oh, I get it. Yeah. People already say you think you all that. I didn't know so many mind readers lived in Garden Heights. Or that people know me as anything other than Big Maeve's daughter who works in the store. I sip my drink and spit it back out. I knew there would be more than a Hawaiian punch in it, but this is way stronger than I'm used to. They shouldn't even call it punch, just straight up liquor. I put it on the coffee table and say, folks kill me, thinking they know what I think. Hey, I'm just saying, you act like you don't know nobody 'cause you go to that school. I've been hearing that for 6 years, ever since my parents put me in Williamson Prep. Whatever, I mumble. And it wouldn't kill you to not dress like. She turns up her nose as she looks from my sneakers to my oversized hoodie. That. Ain't that my brother's hoodie? Our brother's hoodie. Kenya and I share an older brother, 7, but she and I aren't related. Her mama is 7's mama, and my dad is 7's dad. Crazy, I know. Yeah, it's his. Figures. You know what else people saying too? Got folks thinking you're my girlfriend. Do I look like I care what people think? No, and that's the problem. Whatever. If I'd known following her to this party meant she'd be on some extreme makeover Star Edition mess, I would have stayed home and watched Fresh Prince reruns. My Jordans are comfortable and damn, they're new. That's more than some people can say. The hoodie's way too big, but I like it that way. Plus, if I pull it over my nose, I can't smell the weed. Well, I ain't babysitting you all night, so you better do something, Kenya says and scopes the room. Kenya could be a model, if I'm completely honest. She's got flawless dark brown skin, and I don't think she ever gets pimples. Slanted brown eyes and long eyelashes that aren't store-bought. She's the perfect height for modeling, too, but a little thicker than those toothpicks on the runway. She never wears the same outfit twice. Her daddy, King, makes sure of that. Kenya is about the only person I hang out with in Garden Heights. It's hard to make friends when you go to a school that's 45 minutes away and you're a latchkey kid who's only seen at her family's store. It's easy to hang out with Kenya because of our connection to 7. She's messy as hell sometimes, though. Always fighting somebody and quick to say her daddy will whoop somebody's ass. Ha! Yeah, it's true. But I wish she'd stop picking fights so she can use her trump card. Hell, I could use mine too. Everybody knows you don't mess with my dad, Big Mav, and you definitely don't mess with his kids. Still, you don't see me going around starting shit. Ooh, I'm loving this book already, but I'm gonna end it there, because I'm starting to get a headache. Whew. Alright, well, that was Angie Thomas. The Hate You Give. So, to those of you watching, thank you for being here. There's where you find all the links and things. If we were on Twitch, you could use Command Discord to get to the Discord link. And I always seem to forget to put that in the... Oh, wait, I don't need to because I put the card. Duh! Anyway, so in the YouTube description, there will be a link to the card. It's called MonriaTitans Summarize. You will also find a link to the MonriaTitans Bookshop. Links to all the things. If you wish to find me on the social medias, it's MonriaTitans on YouTube. It's also MonriaTitans on, well, everything, really. Even on Reddit, but I don't use it because I don't understand how to use it. It confuses me. But Instagram and Twitter. If you also follow me for the streaming, I tried to get those to match, I really did. But what's funny is those two might hate me. So if you go to Become Empowered on Instagram and Be Empowering on Twitter, that's where you'll find all the artist shoutouts. I also share some things regarding mental health and whatnot. Try to get those to match, but Be Empowering was taken on Instagram. Become Empowered was taken on Twitter. And I'm also an artist myself, Titans Mariah Art. And with me talking about the Bookshop a little bit, this is my favorite affiliation, Bookshop.org, what I like to call the Etsy for small business bookstores, and right now they have get 5% off your order. If you plug in your email, I highly recommend it. I'm on their newsletter as well. And their mission, they are the Etsy for small business bookstores, and they are empowering local small business bookstores in the age of e-commerce Want to get away from Amazon? Get books for yourself. Or get as far away from Amazon as possible, I should say. They still have the corner on the book market. I always go to bookshop.org first. Anyway, you want to give me a hand to support the channel, get yourself some books, get as far away from Amazon as you can, then that's 3 skips with a stone if you go to bookshop.org/shop/MonriaTitans. And you check out my bookshop. Inspired by all the book bans going on in Texas, that's what inspired my grabbing Slaughterhouse-Five and The Hate You Give, because they were on the list. Inspired the book banned edition of the Let's Read Some Shits, and I can't scroll down on here. Sad face. However, the top bookshelf on my bookstore is regarding the banned books. Banned and censored books. So do go, please check that out. And now we come to a close so I can figure out why the frick it got so hot in here. Remember, we are gamers not because we don't have a life, but because we choose to have many, which can also be said of readers. If anyone asks why you like video games, remind them a game is a problem-solving activity approached with a playful attitude, a quote by Jesse Shaw. And if anyone gives you shit for your interest, tell them, you may not like video games, but what I learned from them is this: no enemies in front of you means you are going the wrong way. Thank you for watching. May every decision you make be in the spirit of fairness, and may the rest of your day not go to shit. See you next time.